How to pass the Nasm. So, backstory, I actually failed the first time I took the test. I actually took the 6th edition right before they was getting ready to switch over into the 7th edition. So I failed the 6th edition by 2 points. I went back and changed some answers. And I actually changed those answers to the wrong answer. So I probably could have passed. So I had 7 days to take it again. You pass it one time, you fail it one time, you get 7 days, I think. You fail it the second time, you get 30 days. But I didn't want to jump into the 7th edition because I was going to have to take that edition. So I took some time off to actually I just started living life. The information can slip away from you. You know, this is a self-study. So one of the most important things that you're doing when you're doing a self-study is that you have to stay on top of your information every day or every other day, or how many times you're trying to study throughout the week. You don't have to study all day, every day. I think maybe an hour or two each day and just breaking things down each day, going through the sections and the chapters, you should be fine. But you don't want to be taking weeks off and, then trying to remember things like that. So you just want to make sure that you're staying on it. We're not in the class with a teacher and 30, 40, 50 students around us. It's all by yourself. So some of the reasons why I think I failed the first time. Number one, I didn't study the right way. Number two, I would say that, you don't just memorize things. You also want to understand. You also want to break the body down, know where each muscle is, how the muscle contracts, and, the concentric and the eccentric, or the eccentric and the concentric. This is reciprocal inhibition. This is contracted, so my tricep is lengthening, it's relaxing right now. But I get into all that. So I would say that reading is cool. If you're a super reader like that, I've seen people like that. I think people who can just read forever, all day, they have some type of super talent. So I think that if you're trying to take the NASM within 30 days or maybe 2 months, if you can just get up and just read like that, but I think that won't be effective. I think you want to highlight the things that's going to actually be on the test, because reading can actually be wasting time, because you want to effectively get to what's the most important things. The exam is actually completely different from how you're studying or what you're studying. I thought that if I was passing all the practice tests that I was good for the exam. I had memorized the overhead squat, I memorized the OTP model, OPT model, but and I was just going to go through all the practice exams, and I thought I was good. Once I saw the questions, it was killing me because it was just so different, because you really had to understand the body more than just memorize. Getting into what's actually on the exam to help you study more effectively. Number one, I'm going to say BMI. You got your systolic, you got your diastolic. Systolic is on top, diastolic is on the bottom. So when I think of diastolic, I think of I think of bottom. So that helps me understand that that's diastolic. It's when the body is resting, the blood pressure. Let me see, type 1 and type 2 muscles. I would say the stages of change, the stages of change, pre-contemplation, contemplation. What you got? You got action, you got preparation, you got action, you got maintenance. Let me see. Next, you have muscle spindles, Golgi tendon. When I think of the muscle spindles, I think of stretching. Golgi tendon is the tension within the muscle. So I think of foam rolling out that tension. Some people say they got questions on bones. I didn't get questions on bones this time, but make sure you study the bones, the epimysium, the paramysium, the endomysium. Let's see. Let me see. I actually didn't get much on heart rate. That was one of the last things I studied, was understanding the heart. Some people got it. I actually didn't get it this time. I got it on a 6th edition test. So understand that the deoxygenated blood, the blood that's lacking in oxygen, but it's going to be high in carbon dioxide. Remember that the atrium is superior to the ventricle. So the blood is always going to go through the atria before it goes to the ventricle. So it's going to go down the atria to the ventricle, and then it's going to go to the lungs to get the oxygen. Then it's going to take it back up to the left atria, to the left ventricle, and back into the body. Remember, the right side is pulmonary, the left side is systematic. So it goes through the left atrial to the left ventricle back into the body with oxygen. So I hope you understand that. It's pretty simple. I thought it was going to be hard. So next thing I would say, eccentric, concentric. Understand that your eccentric phase is going to be your loading phase. That's going to be your stretch shortening cycle. It's also going to be your negative. So if I'm on a bench, I'm coming down, your prime mover is going to be your pecs. So I'm coming down on my bench. This is going to be eccentric. It's negative. This is the loading cycle. Your loading cycle, just like when you're getting ready to jump, you go all the way down, you're getting ready to load. That's a stretch shortening cycle as well. So as you press up, that's going to be your concentric. It's going to be your concentric. So that just know that when the muscle is shortened right here with a bench press, so the pecs are short right here. So that's going to be the concentric. When they're long like that or they're loading, that's going to be the eccentric. So next, frontal, sagittal, and I almost said Sagittarius, transverse. So sagittal is cutting the body in half. That's going to be your flexion and extension. That's going to be like your running. That's going to be your lunges. Your frontal is going to be your adduction and abduction. So you think of lateral raises when you're in the frontal, you're going adduction, abduction. So remember that adduction is going toward the body, going toward the midpoint of the body. And when you're coming away from the body, it's going to be your abduction. Transverse, that's going to be your rotations, your oblique twists and things like that. Okay, definitely you have to know your reciprocal inhibition. You have to know your altered reciprocal inhibition. You got to know your autogenic. You have to know your synergistic dominance. You got to know your length tension relationships, your altered length tension relationships, and don't just seek to memorize the definition. It's not going to give you actual definitions. You might get that, but very seldom. But you're going to have to know different muscles and what's going on, because earlier I was talking about this reciprocal inhibition. So you're coming up on a bicep curl. This is reciprocal inhibition. When I contract the bicep, the tricep is lengthened. So that's going to be reciprocal inhibition. So just know those things: proteins, fats, carbs, the grams of calories within protein and things like that. That was on both tests. You can't miss these, okay? Skin fold sites, that's your Dern and Wormsley, and that's your Jackson Pollock. I didn't get that, but some people said that was on the test. Understand your checkpoints. That's your head, your shoulders, your feet, your knees, and your lumbopelvic hip complex. That's your 5 kinetic checkpoints. Know which side to stand when you're checking somebody. So if they're doing the pulling and the pushing, that's going to be standing to the side of that person. If you're checking the feet and the knees, that's going to be in front of the person. So just understand where to stand when you are working with a particular client, because you don't want to be standing on the wrong side, because you won't be able to see what's being effective and what's being overactive or underactive and things like that. So what else? Overactive and underactive muscles, very important. Some people say they got these questions 10 times in a row. They was kind of scattered throughout my test, my exam, but it's going to be very important that you know the muscles. You know the muscles, understand the muscles, understand how they contract and interact and everything like that. Luckily on the 6th edition, it was a lot more muscles to learn. They made it a lot more simple. So it shouldn't be no excuses with the 7th edition. No excuses not for you not to know, not to memorize the overhead squat. Let me see what else. Excessive forward lean. What helped me is that I just had little sentences that helped me remember. I had he goes right, he goes left. That's my hip flexor complex. That's my gastrocnemius, and that is my he goes right rectus abdominis. And then he goes left with the excessive forward lean. That is my hamstring complex. That is my gluteus max and med. And that is my, he goes left, lumbar extensors. So just remember little sentences like that is going to help you to get past that. And then once you get those questions, it's going to be a lot more easier for you to answer those questions. Some muscles are always underactive. Some muscles are always overactive. Just like the gluteus maximus, it should be no excuse for you to put gluteus maximus overactive. It's always underactive. So when you're taking the test and you see gluteus maximus and it's asking you what's an overactive muscle, you should automatically, in the process of elimination, scratch out gluteus maximus. It's always underactive. Know your draw in. That's going to be for your local muscles. You're bringing the navel to the spine. You're bracing. You're working with the global muscles. Know the heart rate formula. I think that's heart rates. I can't remember it. I put it up on the screen. But know your heart rate formula and the Tanaka formula. They may ask you that. Let's see. Know your balance stabilization, your balance strength, and your balance power. Also know your plyo. Can't miss that. Know your front set. So that's going to be your plyo stabilization, your plyo power, and your plyo strength. I hope I'm saying it right. But you got your front side mechanics and you got your back side mechanics. So when you are in running form, your knee that's off the ground, that's going to be your front leg. That's the leading leg. That's going to be your front side mechanics. And that's going to be flexion. That's going to be your hip flexion. That's going to be your knee flexion. That's going to be your dorsiflexion. Your backside mechanics. That's going to be the leg in the back. Your hip your hip extension, your knee extension, and your plantar flexion. So you got your dorsiflexion and you got your plantar flexion. Okay. General adaptation. That's going to be your alarm reaction, your resistance development, and your exhaustion. Alarm reaction is alarm reaction. So if you haven't worked out in years and then the first day you worked out or you never worked out, first day you work out, your body's going to be sore. You're probably going to have DOMS, delayed on-site muscle soreness. So that's going to be your alarm reaction. Just that first hit into working out. You may not want to go back that second day where you got to stretch a lot and your muscles going to be real sore. Resistance development is adapting to the stress. Exhaustion is when you're working out in a particular phase too long or you're just overworking. So you start to get exhausted. You start to get tired and things like that. So that's your exhaustion. I would say is that what I got throughout the test, what they were kind of sprinkled in, I had a couple questions on that, is my lane as a personal trainer. Understand that you're not a dietitian. Understand that you're not a nurse or a doctor. Your job is to make sure that the client sees those people, but you don't want to be breaking down, medical terms and what medications the client needs to be taking, what diet the client needs to be taking. You want to work with the dietitian. You want to work with the medical professional about what's best for the client. So always make sure that the client is listening to what the medical person is telling them, and you don't want to try to overstep those boundaries. So you're going to get questions on that. Stay in your lane as a personal trainer. So tips I would say is that get some sleep, energy. When I first took the exam, I was dozing off throughout the exam. Don't do that. I probably was skipping questions, probably wasn't answering questions with my whole brain functioning. So what I did was that I took an energy drink 20 minutes before the test so that I would be wide awoke. I know some of you guys probably have healthier options. So go with your healthiest option so that you can have energy throughout the exam and be wide awoke. Now, last thing I'm going to say is Show Up Fitness helped me a lot. It gave me direction about what to study, because if not, I would have just went back to the book, did the practice tests and things like that. But Show Up Fitness, he gave me a plan of what to study. So check those videos out so that you are more effective in your studying. You can pass this exam. You can do it. Hit me up in the comment section. Tell me what you think about the video, and don't be afraid to subscribe. Peace.